There is absolutely no business strategy or entrepreneurial training in PT school. None. Zilch. Nada. So going out and wanting to be an entrepreneur and go out on my own and be successful in business, I had to hire a coach or have a mentor or someone in my space. You don't need to go back and get your MBA unless you want to, but don't stop yourself from facing that dream or for chasing that dream because you don't have the expertise, because someone out there does and they're willing to help you.
Welcome to the Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we take regular clinic owners and turn them into cash-based multimillionaire entrepreneurs. Warning, if you're a doctor who listens to this podcast regularly, you will make millions of dollars. Do not listen to this podcast unless you want to be a successful clinic owner who helps thousands of patients achieve their health goals and adds more money than you can imagine to your bank account. You've been warned.
Welcome to the Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we take regular clinic owners and we turn them into super clinic owners. I'm one of your hosts, Jennifer Gligoric. That's my name. And today you're going to be here with me and an incredible guest who's a doctor of physical therapy. She's a leader, entrepreneur, philanthropist. She's dedicated to empowering high-achieving women through visionary business coaching as a She Sells consultant. She's also the founder of the Carl Edward Foundation and host of Empower Her Radio. So let us give a huge Super Clinic welcome to Dr. Corey Winn to the show. Welcome to the show, Corey.
Thank you so much. That was a lot. That made it sound really incredible.
Yeah, well, you're pretty incredible.
All the time.
Oh, yeah, right. I'll be your little town crier. This is the second time that Corey and I, well, actually the third time. I think this is our third time we've met. And every time it's like pop, 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 and then time goes. So I'm going to try to keep this reined in for you guys, because Corey really does have this incredible wealth of experience from running her own practice, from also moving into coaching, and then starting this incredible foundation. So she's just has a very diverse career. How did you make that transition from being a doctor of PT to going into empowerment? Let's just start there.
It started, I think, where a lot of people do when they have kids. I went to PT school and I was going to be a full-time physical therapist forever and have the secure job and have the pension and have the 401k. And then my daughter came and she was 6 months old, crawling across the bathroom floor. And I was so excited because, of course, I thought I was the first person to see her crawl. So I dropped her off at daycare, so excited, and said, guess what? She crawled for the first time. No, she did that yesterday. And her teacher walked away. And I was just like, and it was this horrible sinking feeling of how much am I missing dropping her off every day? And ever since—
Why did they have to say that? I mean, like that. Like you'd think.
It's funny.
Come on. For those that are
I looked at the teacher and I said, please don't tell me that. Please don't tell me that. Let me think that I'm the first one to see, because I know how much I'm missing every time I drop her off. And she was totally stunned. I'm like, you work with other moms. You have to have heard this before. But that was the beginning.
They probably just went home and cried. And she just thought, whatever.
That was the first step. I would love to say that I threw caution to the wind and I left and became an entrepreneur at that point. But, it was baby steps. I pulled back and started working part-time. I transitioned about 5 years ago and started working as a physical therapist and a health coach. And that was kind of my first step into entrepreneurship, and really working mainly with women who desperately wanted to change their health, desperately wanted to change their circumstances. And so many of them were so incredibly successful and then backslid. And I watched it for years, over and over, some of the same clients. And I thought there's more to this than that. There's so much more. And around the same time, I invested in my own coach to really get some clarity on, which direction am I going to go? What do I want to do? And it was then that I realized it wasn't an issue of wanting to get healthy or not get healthy. There's a million different opinions about nutrition, but you have to recognize your worth first. You have to recognize that you are worthy of being healthy. You are worthy of putting yourself first. You're worthy and important enough to make that decision. And that was the next step of, I don't necessarily want to be a health coach anymore. I want to work with women to transform their lives. If health is involved in that, okay, that's beautiful. But for the most part, it's mindset work and coaching and clarity and high achieving women who are like, I'm done being burned out. I'm done being stressed. This box that I put myself in is not working for me anymore. But what do I do? And how many of us know so many incredible women who have expertise that will go in so many different avenues? We don't have to stay on the same path just because we checked all the boxes and went to PT school or went to med school or wherever.
But how do I make money? There's this sunk cost fallacy. I've already put so much time and effort in it. I can't stop now. That would be dumb. That would be a waste of all this education or this, with rather thinking, well, is this actually making me happy and nurturing me?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you have to think about what were you really put on this earth to do? And do you still feel like you're on the path for that? Or, because maybe you thought you were, but do you still believe that? Mm-hmm. And you might have changed your mind. Maybe life went, you know what? You were close, but really no cigar. Really, we're going to move you over here. Like, that's where you needed to be then, but now you need to be somewhere else. You have to be just as mindful and purposeful as you want to be with the people that you help, with yourself. And that is not easy. So how do you get them in, right? But how do you do that? Like, work with someone when you can see it, because as coaches, we can see it a lot more clearer than the person can than themselves, right? So what are some exercises or things that you do with them where they can go, oh, or maybe it's just a question, or do you have a process for that?
Well, there's two questions I typically ask. The first one is always, what do you want? And typically the high achieving woman that I usually work with is a mom, is a spouse, and are doing all these things. And they're like, it's like crickets, and they stare at you like a deer caught in the headlights. Like, what do you mean? How do I answer that? And they go into what their spouse needs and what their kids need and what's going on at their job. And it's like, no, focus. What do you want? And they have no idea. So it's taking the process of,
and that's not just women. I work with women and men too, and very similar, the same question. And it is crickets. They will go to what they feel they need to say or what makes sense, mm-hmm. but it isn't the answer to that question.
Right. Yeah. And the next part is something my mentor, Elise Archer, and the founder of She Sells talks a lot about is, if there were no consequences or limitations, what would your dream life look like? And because so often we immediately go to fear, well, I would do this, but this. And it's like, no, there's no consequences or limitations. And it's interesting to see there's so many of us who immediately say, well, but there are consequences and limitations. That's true. That logically and logistically, reasonably, that's true. But if we're going to make quantum leaps in our life, we can't think reasonably. We can't think, well, if this was rational and it was stepwise,
no one would fly.
You don't quantum leap 3 feet in front of you. You quantum leap and launch a business and launch a nonprofit and have a podcast and have a million things happen in a year. And you look back and go, whoa, how did I get here? I never would have thought in a year that would happen.
Yeah, no, yeah. I like the idea of quantum leaping and being able, because you see that and you look at the most successful people on the planet. That's how they think. They think in this quantum leap. If there weren't any limitations, what would I really want? Well, I'd want peace on earth. I'd want this. And there is a way to reverse engineer anything, but fear will stop us. Or it'll provide a challenge, and maybe we don't know how to get over that challenge. Well, it's fine. We can meet the people and network with those people and joint venture, whatever, and they'll know that. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good question. That's a good question to ask. So you said you would have a podcast and all. Did you do that all in 1 year?
Mm-hmm. I did.
Wow. What made you ask yourself that question?
Well, I told you I invested in coaching.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting down at a live event in Portland, which we're going to have again this summer, Superhuman Selling Live. And I had been a health coach for almost 5 years, and I just was pushing and grinding, and it was no longer bringing me joy. But it was like I'd put so much into it, just like you said before, I'd put so much into it. I can't leave now. And in that moment, our mentor asked, she said, well, what does it feel like to you? Because I had mentioned wanting to launch my own practice and a podcast. And she said, well, what does that feel to you? I said, that lights my soul on fire. I mean, it was immediate. It wasn't like, well, I don't know, maybe. And she said, then that's it. You've already answered your question. And I think that's one of the biggest parts of coaching is none of us are here to tell you what needs to be done. I mean, there's so much strategy out there. And yes, we do have strategy to help you with. But so much of it is what do you want and how to quantum leap and how you can embody the woman or the man who has those dreams done already, because that's when you start acting like that person, reaching out, ideas come to fruition, all sorts of things, but it takes that decision. And so many of us are stuck in, well, I don't know how, I don't have the network, I don't have this, I don't know how to do that. You'll stay stuck forever if you worry about the how. And I remember the first time I heard that, I thought, but you have to know the how. And it was like, when I finally was okay with letting go of the how, things happened. I mean, instantaneously.
Oh, that's fascinating. Letting go of the how. I was working years ago with my son. I was like, are you really sure you want to be an engineer? Are you really sure you want to do this? And so we talked to a coach for kids. And that is exactly, it was a different process. He has a different process. He named it differently, but it was the idea of kids. Where is the top of the summit? What you're going to do is go to college, not even know what your major is going to be. And you're just going to go all around that mountain and probably starve and die. You'll freeze into a popsicle and you'll never actually get there because you haven't defined where there is. So once they define where there is, then they look at the strengths and go, okay, well, guess what? With these strengths and this is one of the 15 different paths you can use to get there. But this one seems best aligned for your personality and blah, 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 blah. And when you're kids, it's so great when we have that pliable mindset because it's before the world kicked us in the face and someone broke our heart and all that other stuff that happens. But when you are young, if you can tell yourself, if I was a kid again and I still had hope, right? It's so kind of like, negative, but if you still had hope, right? What would that be? What would you do? And then all of a sudden it does become limitless. You can start to dream again. And it's the people who do that and have that, bring that energy in, find it somewhere inside of themselves. Then someone like you have a really great energy. And I could see you going, having it, and then you popped it out and then pop, pop, pop. Now look at you.
Mm-hmm. And how many of us stay stuck because of other people's expectations of us? I mean, when I talked about leaving the physical therapy world, which I haven't completely, I just do wheelchair seating and mobility evaluations now. But when I talked about like leaving that full-time secure job, my dad was like, what are you doing? My dad was the first one in his family to go to college. He'd worked for, at that time, I don't know, 30 years. He was like, what are you doing? You're going to leave your 401k, your insurance. And I was like, hold on. I said, but Dad, it doesn't bring me joy anymore. And I think that
I can already see the eye rolled in the back of people's head, because that's what it is. A parent, if you want to protect, our kids, and you want to go bring you joy, that's why it's called work. It's not called fun, like I can hear that. Right.
Oh yeah. And it's not that everything's butterflies and flowers all the time. It's not. I mean, let's be real. It takes actual work to build a business. It takes actual steps and strategy to do things. But if you're going to a job every day that sucks your soul away, all you're doing is wasting your life. You may be really good at it, But if it doesn't bring you joy, think about the amount of hours you are spending in that job. And could your expertise be utilized somewhere else? And I would argue 99% of the time, yes. You've learned something along the way in your career that can be utilized in a different place or a different path.
And what makes it hard is when you're the boss. You've created, when we're entrepreneurs, a lot of us, when we start out, we know how to do something well. And so we create a job and we become our boss of ourselves, but we've just created a job for ourselves. We haven't really thought of us as being the CEO or even a shareholder of an entity that we've created. And those are very different mindsets. That is always a big aha moment when you go, wow, I'm my own boss and I'm a really bad boss. I never let myself go on vacation. I don't have any time off. I don't pay myself well. Like, you can get down really quickly with that, but that's just a challenge that you can get out of.
I'm really glad that you said that too, because let's be honest. I went to physical therapy school. I had my doctorate. Most people would be like, wow, she has it all together. There is absolutely no business strategy or entrepreneurial training in PT school. None. Zilch. Nada. So going out and wanting to be an entrepreneur and go out on my own and be successful in business, I had to hire a coach or have a mentor or someone in my space. You don't need to go back and get your MBA unless you want to, but don't stop yourself from facing that dream or for chasing that dream because you don't have the expertise, because someone out there does, and they're willing to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have, and don't go it alone. And I think that especially in the female entrepreneur space, there is this idea of going it alone a lot more, being self-reliant. I can do this. And the networking has gotten a lot better in the last decade or so. There's a lot more mentors that are successful mentors and, that do that. Look at the She Cells. I remember thinking, golly, I was reading over that because I got introduced to that through you. And I remember thinking, wow, as I looked at it, I would have done anything for this, like 10 years. They didn't really have that. It was still very, not that there's anything wrong with Carnegie and all the rest of it, but it was still very testosterone. I'll sell ice to an Eskimo. And for people who want to have heartfelt selling to be a professional consultant that helps people figure out if this is the right solution or product for them, though that feels so inauthentic. And you're just like, ugh. I don't want to be like that, right?
And you think of, so my background's obviously in healthcare. You would think, what would I need a business or selling strategist for? Like, I don't need that. When you go out on your own, you are selling yourself. You are selling your expertise. You are selling your education. You are selling your ability to make that patient better. And if you don't know how to do that, you will fail.
Yeah, and you're the product. Literally, there's 15 PTs in one block.
It's amazing to me how many of my colleagues are like, oh, I don't sell things. I'm like, yes, you do. Every day you're selling you and presenting yourself and marketing strategy and branding. Just all the things are so important that outside of actually doing your physical therapy job, when you go out and be an entrepreneur, it's a whole new world.
It is a whole new world, but it also allows you to differentiate yourself. So when you put yourself in the mindset of no matter what I do, whether I'm a Reiki coach or I'm a healthcare practitioner or I'm selling shoes, whatever it is, you're the biggest differentiator. And so when you can speak to people and really think about who you're talking to and speak to them in the what's in it for them to work for you and how you decided to answer the challenge to them of what's in it for them. So if it's shoes, why your shoes are better, maybe you have a better art supporter of that, but this what's in it for them, then you realize that, well, that's all I've been doing is selling this whole time. Right. Because that's what, and I'm doing it. If you can do it from that thing of through you, and to be an evangelist for your cause, no matter what it is,
right?
Then it becomes then all of a sudden you're not selling. but you're just getting all these clients. I don't know how. I just have these great conversations.
So, and that's why I love She Sells so much and why I decided to be a consultant, because it's always coming from a space of service. And it's always the question of, what do you need from me? Where are you stuck? What has been a challenge? Not, bombarding a potential client with, well, we have this strategy and we have this strategy and we have this strategy. Most of us as women, as high achieving women, will shut down, at least me personally. If you come and bombard me with every possible promotion or product or whatever, I'm just like, oh.
And it sings and it changes color. You can do this and you only have to do it, that's overwhelming.
But I will never forget the first time I went to buy my own car. The guy who sold it to me was saving up to go to vet school. And he walked up to me and he said, there's lots of different cars on the lot. Look around. I'll be over there to answer any questions that you have. And he walked away. And, I went back and I asked him some questions and I went back but he never followed me around. He never chased after me about, there's this sale happening. And I will never forget that, because when I think about who I am and the integrity that I bring to every space that I work in, it's like, how can I help this patient? How can I serve you in a selling sense? How can I serve you as a leadership coach? What do you need from me? Because when we get to that space, there's buy-in. If the person that you're working with, client, patient, whatever it is, feels like they're seen and heard and you are mutually working together to the same mission, they're on board, ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about Empower Her Radio. So I want to, because you do that as well, and it's a really fabulous podcast. So tell me a little bit about the mission on the show and what you're wanting listeners to walk away with that. And everybody, you're going to get the links to all of this. We have 2 incredible giveaways that Corey is going to be giving, and I'll be giving you all that information here later. But let's talk with that.
So I honestly don't remember how I got the idea to do a podcast, but I had been listening to a lot of different beautiful women bringing, Dr. Becky at Good Inside, because I have a 9-year-old daughter. The Superhuman Selling Now podcast was She Sells. And oh my gosh, what is it? The Slight Change of Plans with Maya Shankar. Anyway, point being, there's all these beautiful women out there sharing their message. And I just felt so called to do the same thing in a different way, because I had met all of these incredible business owners, because most of the women who I have as guests on my show are business owners in some sense or another, or they have pivoted from healthcare and moved on. But the point of the show is to give you permission to pivot in life, really, to empower you to make a decision that is good for you. And if I can have a guest who has a similar story to you or has a similar background, and you can watch them pivot or you can watch them chase their dreams, and that allows you to feel empowered to walk away and go, okay, I'm doing this now. I only have this one life. I'm moving forward with this. Then my mission's complete.
Yeah, I really loved your show. That's how I had met Corey from being on that. But the pivot, and as women, we have a couple of pivots that we do. We have the pivot to college. You have a pivot to some women getting married or just being in that relationship. Sometimes you pivot with children. You pivot. I'm about to do a big pivot. My son is going off to college, and so this last week, and so I'll tell you, so that goes right into your show. He got his pilot's license. He's 19.
Wow.
When he was a kid, he wanted to do that, and I just fed that for him, and we invested in this simulator program he could use where there's no graphics. You can't crash it or do anything. It's just you buy the type of plane, you get that actual cockpit with all the hundreds of little things, and then you can talk to mission control and do it. So anyway, and it's the real simulator. So he's like 11, and at the time he'd been on that for like 7 hours, and he was like, but I'm flying to so-and-so. So you have to fly the entire normal flight time.
Wow.
If you do anything wrong, well, then it just goes, nope, sorry. no, like cock and dedicated as a kid. And then to see, I've cried a lot during his little journey because his first solo flight by himself, I like bawled. He got to go like right over me, and I just thought that's freedom. Like how I can't even imagine that freedom at that young. And then it hit me when he got it. I was like, wow, he got this big goal. And then I thought, for the last 20 some odd years, even more, because I wanted him before he was ever even a thought in my head. I loved him. He was always in me in some way. Right. Mm-hmm. And, but now he's got to go and be an adult. Now, what am I going to do? And I have had, I'm going to say, and this is probably going to go until he goes, I'm having that pivot crisis. Now, what are my big things? What am I going to do? Now I get to do something different because this is transitioning and it's opening up space in a way that I didn't even think about until this happened. So like, I'm a smart person. I deal with people going through it, but it didn't, it wasn't me, and I logically, I knew, oh yeah, I'll have some empty nest or whatever. But then it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Mm-hmm. And we need help. So I'm probably going to get, I have a coach and a mentor, 2 of them, and I'm probably going to get someone to help me just through that.
Yeah. Well, and it's incredibly important. And I think the biggest thing that I hear from all of that and that I want your audience to hear is it's okay to ask for help. Yes. Like as women, like you said earlier, we are just programmed. We have to do it ourselves. What will people think if we ask for help? What if it makes me look like I don't know what I'm doing? And the moment that you can ask for and receive that help, your life changes dramatically. And I give my husband a hard time because he doesn't delegate well. And I looked at him one day and he was doing like 50 things and I was just kind of sitting there watching him. And I said, would you like some help? You haven't asked for any, but you're like holding all the things and trying to open the door. And but that's how we are as moms too. It's like, no, I've got it. And it's like, it's okay to not have it all together. And, I also really love what you said about really encouraging your son. And I think you and I both can say we've really encouraged our children to go and do, as kids, our parents always said, oh, you can do whatever you want to do. You can be whatever you want to be. And then as you got older, well, hold on, do the safe thing, go to school.
Yes.
And so the other side of Empower Her Radio for me and just all of these pivots and all of these things is for my daughter to see me do those things. For me to say now, while she's 9, you can be whatever you want to be, and have her be old enough now to watch me be whatever I want to be.
So yeah, it's one thing to say all those things.
Oh, mom pivoted, mom did different things. And I mean, I love my parents dearly, but they stayed in their same jobs at their same companies for 35 years. Not that they didn't move around, not that they weren't amazing people and they loved their jobs, but I do wonder sometimes what would have been different if they had chased their dreams a little bit more.
Yeah. And maybe they did, it was a different world. So staying in your job, well, I mean, it was a different world. I don't think my brother just retired after like 48 years. Mm-hmm. My brother's much older than I am. 48 years at the same job. But when you look at everything he did, there was like 15 totally different jobs. He didn't stay in the same area at all. Right. What he ended up with was completely different than where he started. And so those pivots are different. It's not just like that. It's being aggressive, I guess, with your life goals. And he's been very happy in his life doing it while staying at the same job. But yeah, like we have to you cannot tell kids, do as I say and not as I do. Mm-hmm. That is a tough one for parents, like, especially if you're doing something you don't want them to do. That's the easiest one. But the other thing is encouraging them to do things. And they're like, you don't do that. Mm-hmm. Right. So we have to be.
Well, and I'm so glad that you said that, because that was the other reason why I pivoted early on. My husband and I have always tried to be healthy. We've talked to our daughter about, people come in all shapes and sizes and all types of health. Like not everybody needs to lose weight, all the things. But she watched us lose weight and she watched us help people lose weight. And at the ripe old age of 9 and 48 pounds, she said, Mommy, last year I thought maybe I might need to lose weight too. And it was like in that moment, I was like, I'm done. Like everything that we've said has not mattered at all. She has watched us, and I'm not creating an eating disorder at 8 years old. And I mean, that was like the instantaneous, like, nope, we're done here. Now, we're still very healthy. We're very active, but there's no talk about weight or scale or size or anything. And, I hope I helped her pivot out of that. We'll see.
No, yes, because you were aware of it. And because you went, what? You're like 9. Like, you don't have to worry about, like you're 9, you're going to hit growth spurts. You're going to do crazy things. I knew someone who we went out, and he was like 12 at the time, and he had 2. It was IHOP. So IHOP has like a Grand Slam. He ended up eating 2 of those Grand Slams, and he was kind of chunky. I'm going to just say kind of chunky. Within the next 6 months, that kid shot up almost a foot. Literally could not keep him. And he ended up being just the tall little beanpole. His body just needed that at that time. So especially for kids, like we have someone who works with kid athletes. That's a client. And one of the things that he does first, he'll get kids that get injuries, cheerleaders, because they're incredible athletes and all different types, but, football and baseball and all that, but they'll come in with injuries. And he says, one of the first things we do is look at their calories, because they're eating a fraction of the calories that they need to eat. Mm-hmm. And he said, you would not believe how many super active kids are getting injured just because they're not eating enough, because they're just so afraid of this. They're just not getting enough nutrition. And so the first thing we do is we load them up, and they're like, I'm going to, they worry about it, especially like cheerleaders and stuff like that. And what it does is once they get them on the right thing and get them, because this person is they run PT and chiro and all of that for kids. Yeah. And he goes, and we'll do this in a rehab program for their actual, whatever they've hurt. And he said, but that is one of the best stoppers before, to get them to be not re-injured. It's just get enough calories in so your battery can.
You have to think about it, even on a very kind of elementary level. You need to eat for your body to repair, period. That's how your body repairs. That's how you come back from an injury, like on an elemental scale.
Yeah. So before we go, because we're already, you haven't even really dug into all the things that Corey can do, because you do so much. Okay. So what advice would you give for any women who want to leave a legacy and create generational wealth? So this is a loaded one, but wouldn't know where to start. But this is going to be the last thing that we really dive into.
I mean, I think it first goes back down to, what does that mean to them? What I want as leaving an impact may be completely different than what you want. So the first thing is, what does that mean to you? All of us say, well, I want to be successful, or I want to be wealthy. Your idea of wealthy might be very different from mine. So sitting down with my clients and saying, tell me about that. What does that mean to you? And then being able to reverse engineer those goals, or connecting them with the right people for mentorship, or enrolling them in group coaching or private coaching to really dive deep. But it's really first gaining clarity on, what does that mean to you? Tell me about that.
That's really good. I would say, because so many people, there's fear. Sometimes you don't even realize what it is. Sometimes it's just severe limiting beliefs, right? That just stops them, and to get them through that, and then sky's the limit.
Well, exactly. And I think we had this conversation on my show, but and I had it too. It's all about fear, but it was always that voice of, well, who am I to do that? Who am I to be able to be on a podcast, or have a podcast, or launch a nonprofit? Who am I to do that? And getting past and saying, why not? Why not you? I don't have any special skills or magic. I made a decision one day. I was like, no, I'm doing this. Let's go.
Yeah, because, well, and the good thing about the internet too is it exposes the people who we used to think, oh, well, they're the people that do those things, right? And they gave us these types of people to look up to. And now with the joy of the internet, and we can see how broken and messed up some of those people are, you were like, no, it's got to be me because those people really didn't do a good job of that. Yeah. So maybe we're going to like flip the script a little bit and actually get people who really, really care, are really going to do it in a heart-centered way and to do it that way. But I don't know.
No, but I mean, when you talk about wanting to leave an impact, that's part of what the Dream Life Blueprint is for, is really getting clarity on what you want, what success means to you, what impact means to you. If you want to leave a legacy, what does that mean to you? But really sitting down and taking the time and saying, okay, I want this. What does that mean? Or do I really want that? Was that someone else's dream for me? Because that's okay too. You may come around and be like, oh, I don't really want to do that anymore. That's fine. That's beautiful. Check it off the list.
Yeah, good. And by the way, if y'all are talking about the blueprint, I just want to let you know that once you go to school, you will have all the links. You go to superclinicproject.com. If you just click on the school link, you can get right to this episode, and we'll have all the giveaways. So one of the giveaways is her Dream Life Blueprint. So you can do this exercise. The other giveaway is the Rise and Step into Your Power. And so both of those will be available to you, as well as you can have a free call. So if you went to Corey Winn, that's CoreyWinn.com/free call, then you can talk to Corey. You can find out much more about all the amazing things that she does. Is there anything you can think to add to that, Corey?
Just a little plug for my foundation. So my uncle had a spinal cord injury. I've been working as a PT with neurological diagnoses, with patients with neurological diagnoses for a very long time. And the mission of my foundation is to bridge that gap between what insurance covers and what patients actually need. So whether that's equipment, home modifications, respite care, wheelchair accessible vans, all the things. So you can go to www.thecarledwardfoundation.org and learn more about that.
Thank you. And that's a very, very important organization because there is a big gap between the non-insured and insurance. And it seems like some of the middle class falls through and they can't afford any of it. So this really serves a huge underserved community. Guys, we've went over, but it has just been incredible. Thank you, Corey, for being on here today. Yes. And guys, don't forget, go to superclinicproject.com. You can get to all these links there. And please like, share us, and rate us. The 5-star reviews are how we get more people and how we keep on getting incredible, talented guests like Corey on our show. I hope you have a very great Super Clinic week. Thanks, Corey, and thanks, guys.
You've been listening to the Super Clinic Project podcast. If you like what you hear, subscribe and stay tuned for further episodes of the Super Clinic Project podcast.